Hey, this is Chris, and welcome to week 6? 5? I don't really know. I think it's 6.
It's 6.
It's 6. Guitar? No, it's not Guitar 101. Yeah, see, it's what happens when you do two events at the same time. Blues, Roots to Rock, week 6. Last week, we did this really cool drill called Tell Your Story, and the idea was that you would play a chord in this open position, an E7 chord, and then you would look at the pentatonic scale, and you would muse around with the pentatonic scale as it related to E, as it related to A, and as it related to B. I'm really interested, for those of you who were part of that session this week, or this last week, how'd it go? You know, we spent a lot of time demonstrating it in the last event, and the guided practice should have helped take it a step further in showing you sort of how to do things. So I want to put that invitation out there as we start this new content here. Leave some comments. Let me know how it went. What was challenging for you? What was, were there any revelations that you had? Being able to connect certain notes that might sound good to certain chords. You know, how did the hook idea go? How did the limiting yourself to this area of the neck in the context of these chords? How did that go? So leave some comments, and I'll take a break here in a little bit, and we can maybe I'm just curious to see how you guys did. So this week, and I said this was coming. This week we're looking at essentially 3 licks, and we haven't really done any licks so far, even though we've done, it's been half the course. We're doing blues, and we haven't really learned any licks. It's pretty amazing. And we are going to learn some licks today, but we're going to do it in a different way. And before we work on these licks, I want to talk about the guided practice and the goal in using these licks. Most of the time, whether you go to the Jam Play Lick Library or reading a guitar magazine or someone shows you a lick, you might learn a lick. What's a lick? A lick is a group of notes that you might hear on a guitar solo. Everybody probably knows this lick, or some variant of that. That's a very common sort of blues lick. A lot of times, and a lot of guitar players in their beginner and intermediate stages are very good at learning licks. They're very bad at applying licks. What we've worked up to so far is studying the context. We started with blues forms, then we really looked at limiting ourselves and coming up with melodies and hooks out of just a few notes. Then we looked at combining sort of chords and melody. And so what we're leading up to is this idea that we don't ever take anything in without actually applying it. So as we learn these licks, we're going to learn them with the understanding that even though we're going to learn them as written, we're going to learn them with the intent of holding them loosely and borrowing aspects from these licks so that we can apply to whatever music we've been working on. This is so key because you use some licks or you learn some licks from some of these classic blues people. You don't just want it to stop at, hey, I know these licks. I can't ever use them. I don't know. We're not going to play music like Muddy Waters did. We're just not. We have different technology now. Our music is done with computers, and even if we're trying to play blues, we use a computer. I'm using a computer to teach. You're watching me on a computer. It's a different life. Back in the day when everybody was sitting on their back porch with bottlenecks and busted guitars, that created a certain type of sound. But if we're able to borrow and learn some of these licks and then apply them to whatever music we're working on, you might just take away the way something was bent, or a series of notes that you modify a little bit, but you use similar phrasing to the one you learned in the lick. But you're going to take it and you're going to use it in your music or in the music that you're playing. So that's the goal. we're going to spend very little time, while we are going to go over the tablature, and we're going to spend very little time just playing the lick. We're going to spend more time analyzing the lick, and then we're going to go back over to our blues. We've the blues in E that we've done since the beginning of this. We're going to go back to there, and then I have a special track that we're going to use to play one of the licks today also. But we're going to spend time examining these licks, and then we're going to pull them out of the context that the tab suggests and borrow from them and jam on the lick using the backing track. So that's the plan for today. And while I call up our second track, let's hear some feedback on how things are going.
We don't have a whole lot of feedback. I get the feeling people are watching the video instead of typing. So if you guys have more feedback, type it out now. There's a couple good messages. One of them says, it was a great exercise to focus on notes that complement the chords. It makes it feel more melodic rather than just picking out notes from the scale at random. And that was from Jalba 66.
Cool.
And the rest is just general discussion. So I'm assuming that people practiced and absorbed great quantities of information.
Presuming. Is that what you said? Did you say presuming?
Assuming. Same thing.
I like the word presuming. Could you say presuming? I'm presuming.
I'm presuming.
Yeah, I like that. All right. Here we go. Lick number 1. We are on our high E string. I'm using a sort of distorted tone. Don't have to. It's just what was there. I plugged in my guitar. So I'm going to clean it up a little bit while we're learning this. I'm going to be on my bridge pickup. And one of the cool things about Guitar Pro, and I've got that, is we can actually play the tab. And the reason I want to start there is because if you don't have someone like me working through something like this, your option is you look at the tab, you look at the chords, and you sort of try to guess. With Guitar Pro, you can immediately see and hear at the same time what the tablature is doing. So I think it's a very valuable tool. Guitar Pro and Transcribe for learning stuff is awesome. In fact, there have been a few times over the last few years where I have had a question about something that was notated in a guitar book, and so I have manually inputted into Guitar Pro, just a measure here and a measure there, to see how it, you can look at something and count it, but to really hear it and be able to follow along with it is really great. So it's a really cool tool, and you can slow it down after you've inputted something. So, if you're working on something out of a book, even, you can input it into Guitar Pro, or at least a portion of it, so you can hear it if there's nobody to show you. So we're going to start there. We're going to play the lick a few times. Follow along on the tab with me. I'm not going to play. I'm just going to press the button, and we're going to listen to this first lick. Okay, again. Okay, so in this context, we are starting with the E7 bass, and then we're resolving to A7. So what does that tell you? That tells you that we're in the key of A7. Our A7 is our root. We've also got D7 in there, even though it's not there, it's implied because we're in an A blues. And this could be a turnaround, we're going from the 5, remember we talked about numbers? We're going from the 5 to the 1. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold the chords. I'm going to try to, this is just a new way of thinking for some of you, but this is the way I always do it. We're going to sing along as I play the chords. Here we go. chords one more time. Try it without it. How musical can I make that with my voice before I even play the lick at all? This is going to help a ton. It helps a ton because you already have the music inside of you before you even try to play it. So just like what we're doing is we're taking what we learned in weeks 1 and 2, where we're thinking here first and then playing, and we're applying it to learning a lick. You can't always sing every lick. Sometimes there's too many notes, but you can get the gist of it in your mind so that you can sing along with it. Okay? Let's try. And you know, we got those slides. So that's an interesting note. Da! We're going to that minor third while we're playing an A7. Da! So that note, you can and should bend it a little bit. That 8th. Like that. Okay, so singing it a little bit more. I'm imitating the bend with my voice. And remember, I didn't just come with that idea of bending that note on the 8th fret out of nowhere. Remember we talked about notes in between the notes. Another subset of these lessons that we're doing. I heard that was the minor third based on what we're doing. And we were playing it over that. So knowing what I know and now what you guys know, you should be able to listen to that and go, oh, well, we're going to A7. And A7 has that major third sound. So let's try it. Try things. Use these little tidbits you're learning and try things. Oops. Oops. There it is. Let's make it more musical with the guitar. That was a little choppy, but it was the first time we played it, right? Kind of a cool line. Nothing, it's not really that difficult, but I like it. Okay, so, I've looked at these licks before. You obviously have not. So it's going to take some time for you to do what I just did. But that's the process. And we're going to do that with all 3 of these licks. That's the process that you want to go through. If you can, listen to it first, and then see if you can involve your voice and rhythm guitar first. Get it in your head, and then once you've done that, translate it to your lead playing. You're going to be so much more of a literally vocal lead and blues player if you can do things like that. So let's go to our track now, and let's see if we can cram it in. Now, I'm going to do something. I'm going to play I'm going to call it this track. I'm going to do what maybe some people who do not think might do. Oh, I just learned this lick. Okay, we're gonna play it. All right, so actually that worked really well over the A, right, which is the 4 chord. But when I went in and I played that over E, it did not work. It worked okay here. That worked fine. But remember, when we go to this note in the tablature, we're playing over A. So if we're holding an E chord, granted, with the notes in between the notes, there's probably a way that you could make that work. But my point is this. Do not just, and it's going to become more evident later on in some of the other licks that we're doing, but do not simply take exactly what we have played here and assume that that's going to work all the time over a different musical context or a different key. Be critical of the notes you're playing. Think about the notes you're playing. Are they in the key? Are they, and if they're not, if they're one of your blue notes or your chromatic notes, what is it? Know what you're doing. It'll take a lot of effort right now, but later on, your ear is going to be trained enough to be like, oh yeah, you wouldn't do that, or you would do that, or you would do this if you could, do something in a particular way. So keep that stuff in mind. We're going to jam over the lick a little bit, but Jeff was picking up the mic. Looked like we might have had a question.
We do have a question, and it's about this lick, so I just wanted to get it done real quick.
Do it.
It's from user Richism, and he says, I don't quite catch how you were doing that slide from 0 to 5 on the first string. Can you help me out, please?
Yeah, so 0 to 5, it's sort of strange. You're not really sliding literally 0. I'll do it real slow. So you're sliding from 5 to 3, then what you're doing is you're sliding just from down here, like that. So that would be the very start of that second triplet. Like that. So essentially you're sliding from 1 or 2 or 3. It doesn't really matter. Because it's such a fast sort of thing. So hopefully that makes sense. And if you listen to the tab, it's sort of the same thing. Hear it? You're on 0, but when you slide up, you're just creating that idea that you're traveling from 0 to 5. So I think most of the time when I'm not thinking terribly hard about it, it ends up being from about fret 2.
All right, he said thanks, so
Yeah.
I think that means we're good.
Cool, okay. All right, let's jam over the track a little bit with this lick. Where is my track? Here it is. Okay. If I'm really going to use this over an E, I think there's better notes. A is kind of a weak note over E. So, can I take the phrasing idea and use that somewhere else? Let's try it. That sounds great when I play it right. Now we'll go to A. Ah, we got a B. That didn't sound great. Let's try the E over the B. Oh, well, we'll go again. Okay, so the idea here was that I was using, again, we're all about limiting ourselves and repetition. This is how you practice. We learned a lick, and now we're taking this lick and we're practicing using it. We're adapting it. I mean, that would make a lousy solo, right? Just doing that over and over again. But you can always go back to that. You know now that over E, A, and B, you can use this BB style phrasing, and it works. Cool, huh? Like, this is how you do it. And so you spend a lot of time going over with a backing track, just making it work. And the more you do it, the more you focus on the fact that you're limited, the more you're able to be creative within that. And I'm going to do it a little bit more so you can kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about. But for example, when I went to B, I just guessed, we spent this whole time in this pentatonic area last week. I thought, that might sound good over B, because we talked about that being good over B. So it's different notes entirely, but it is very very similar in phrasing. And I just walked down the pentatonic scale. So this lick led me back into another thing I was familiar about. We're just connecting things we know. Okay, so I'm going to do it again with this lick, and then we'll move on to the next lick pretty soon here.
Hey, real quick before
Yeah.
you do, Ezedim just wanted to know, which key are you playing? Is it E or A?
The backing track is in the key of E, E blues. And so I had to modify. So we're playing on the B string now when we're over E. I'm doing the same lick, except for I'm doing it on the B string instead of the A string. And that made the notes, just using my ear, made the notes work better in this context because we were in E. And then for E, I was on the B string with the same frets as you see in the tab. For B, I was doing 2-4-0. And then rather than going up, I walked down the pentatonic scale. Some variant of that. So that's what I did, and you'll see me do it again here. And you'll also see how phrasing-wise, emotion, tone, all the pick attack, all that stuff becomes more comfortable the more you do it. And so you're internalizing the lick into your own style. Here we go. Two, four. Okay, so that's how you practice. Using it, and it doesn't have to be this track. Could be an entirely different track. And you adapt it, spend some time adapting this lick. Whenever I learn some random new lick, I learn it in the context that it was played first, and then I take it everywhere else I can possibly think of. Rearrange notes, copy the phrasing. You know, I remember one of the ones I was working on, this is just as an example, there's this the Steve Vai lick from For the Love of God that does something like this. It's a pretty, I mean, and it goes real fast. And I thought, oh, you know, that's cool, but I don't know that I'll use that much. But what I ended up doing was taking that da 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 2-note sort of thing and playing it over in different places, you know. And that, I mean, that became a very cool, you know, you can do that anywhere. You know, taking it and learning that phrasing and putting it into your muscle memory. I still to this day don't really ever play this lick, but I use the phrasing that I learned from that lick a lot. It's a very, very handy thing to be able to do. So, any questions before we move on to the next lick?
We do have a quick question. Ezidin was, again, just wondering what is the progression you're using in the track?
Go back to week 1 through 4, particularly week 1 where we talk about blues forms. This is a slow change in E. And it's the track that you could find on week 1. But it's a slow change blues. I'm not going to cover the, and maybe you were already there, you were just wondering where you could get the track. So it's from week 1. But if you haven't taken that one yet, go back there and grab it, take it, and you'll understand the difference between the quick change and the slow change blues progression. But for this particular one, and I didn't have any reason that I chose the slow change over the quick change. I just chose the slow change because it was labeled 001 instead of 002. So, any other questions before we move on? Okay. Excuse me. Let's go to the next lick. So here it is. And pretty simple. There's a repeat sign only because it's more of a, this can turn into more of a groove. Let's listen. Then next page. Back to the first page. Next page. So we're alternating between E7 and A7 again. But this time E is the clear. Oh, well, we don't listen to the last one yet. Okay, so let's see if we can internalize that one while we sing, while we play along with the chords a little bit. Da, 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 da. Just get the rhythm. You're not going to be able to sing every note. Da, 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 da. Da 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 da. Now it should be noted that Guitar Pro, when they bend, da da da. There's going to be a little bit, if you know, with bending, it's not going to be such a clean thing. So with your voice, you shouldn't do that either. Da 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 da. In fact, there'd be that point where you bend up a little bit and then maybe back down just a little bit. Those are great things to think about when you're vocalizing, because then when you go to the guitar, it feels more natural. And there's a disconnect for me whenever I'm even listening to Guitar Pro and reading tablature and then immediately go to the guitar, because the Guitar Pro stuff is so not musical. It's so robotic. And by putting it in your voice first, it helps with this kind of thing a lot. Let's do it a little bit more. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 da. Okay, good enough. Let's try to do it without the tab. Just sing it, or without the track. Da, 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 da. Da, 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 okay, cool. All right, let's go to the tab and learn the lick. G string, half step bend. Oops. That's what it's implying. It's implying that you don't bend back down. Like that. So that's just the very first 3 notes. That's a pickup. And so what happens immediately after that is we hit our low E. Like that. And then we start this little riff that's happening. Go back up to that 2. Bend up a little bit on that 3. Okay, so now watch. We'll take it from the very beginning. There's 2, 0. Interesting, huh? We go 2. That's a tough thing, right? Where you're playing 2 on your D string, and then you pull down. You got to have your muting in place with this hand. Let's play it again. Oops, let's do it again. That's it. I mean, and there's that little pull-off, which is the same as you experienced in the beginning. That's over E. So before we move on to A, let's internalize that a little bit. So this, to me, it's a lick, but it's more, because we're repeating it so much and it's so rhythmic, this is a riff, right? And riffs are a little, I mean, you can still do the same thing you do with licks where you adapt them to different things, but they're a little more specific because they are the groove. Okay, let's move on to the A or over the A chord. Okay, so it looks like we go. What's interesting about this is it doesn't look like anything changes except for we're still doing our pull off on our 2nd fret on the G string. So That's cool. Oh, I see. Okay, so we're not going to this note. So we don't have this weird thing that happens here anymore. Then back to E. Okay, so it's the same exact phrasing using just slightly different notes. All right? So what I've done is I've prepared any questions about phrasing, lick, anything like that before we have a special track that we're just going to practice riffing over this and getting in the groove.
This isn't a question, but in regards to the first half of the lick, Richism says, a pull-off works great after that quarter bend on the 2nd fret. So I just thought you might want to...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like that. I've definitely done it yeah. Like that. That's, yeah. You'll hear me do that over the track. And so this, the lesson, this session was named after this lick, really, because if you listen to ZZ Top, they take a lot of, this sort of muddy waters, and when I played it slow and cleaner, it definitely sounded like a classic blues thing. But you put that pull off in there, you crank up the gain a little bit, and stick to your lower strings a little bit more, and man. Oops. Sounds great. So here, let's play it over the track. This is in your supplemental content for you JamPlay members. If you're not a JamPlay member, you might as well log off now because this is going to be, you're never going to see this ever again. Become a JamPlay member and you can do these over and over again. Okay, here we go. From the top. All right. So, enough said on that one, really. I mean, it's just a matter of practicing that. And I'm, of course, adding that pull off. Yeah, it works really, really well. So, moving on to the last lick. Oh, unless there's a question.
Yeah, there is one question before we move on. Mm-hmm. This is from good sir Matt Wellman, and he says, this is kind of a new playground for me. I'm curious if you'd recommend being creative with riffs until that burns out, or is adding more licks super helpful? To me, in my mind, Matt, good question, they're all kind of the same. Licks and riffs that are just, to me, riffs, they're more rhythm, maybe sometimes more rhythm oriented, but usually riffs are
Not as melodic, maybe, although that's not really the case either. They're kind of the same thing. The only difference is that riffs are generally like support a melody, whereas licks generally sort of are the melody in certain roles. Being creative with riffs and licks is just fine. I think you want to, the only thing I'd say is you want to resist the urge to just add and add and add, right? You don't want to just add things without having time to do what we're doing here, which is really woodshed them and practice them and apply them to different musical contexts. Learn less licks, less riffs, and spend more time taking those and really internalizing them into the music that you play. That's what I'd say.
There was just a couple more cool comments. People said Hooker made some money with that lick.
Yeah.
Sounds like George Thorogood. Sounds a bit like the Green Onions. I'm actually not sure who the Green Onions are, but I will take your word for it.
Yeah, cool. All right. I'm saving the best for last. I like this last one a lot. Okay. Listening. This is a classic turnaround that Muddy may have done. Tab definitely does not do it justice. Okay, so clearly we're in E. So I'm just going to strum the E along with it. Oh, and then we're going to B, and then back to E. Again. Yeah. All right. So we're moving a little faster now, but the idea here is that da 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 Make sure that you've got an idea of it going in your head before we just try to play it. This one is tricky because it's very intervallic, it's very difficult to sing, but the rhythm, da 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 da, that triplet, da 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 da, that's really going to help you to get that in your soul as you're doing this, as you're looking at the tab, as you're tapping, and as you're sort of taking this all in, because the string skipping that happens during this is very difficult to play good triplets if you don't already have that feel, okay? So before we go and we actually do the lick, we're going to just do the first one, which is 5 and 4. And I find it best, you can pick it like this. I use hybrid picking with stuff like this, with your string skipping. So get that triplet. Practice it with the hybrid, or however you like it best. One, two, three, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's how it's done. Get that rhythm in you, because that's the substance of the whole lick right there. Okay, now let's look more closely at the tab. So 5. So we start with 0. Establish our tone, then then we inch down. Okay, take that again. That's the first measure. Again. Oops. And it's kind of neat to leave that. It doesn't specifically say let ring, but it's okay to sort of let that E ring a little bit. Really cool sound. Now here, kind of neat, we hit the E again, and then we do a hammer on, so we have a little grace note there. This is the beginning of the second measure of the lick. That's kind of neat. And then we hit our top E string, our high E string. So I use my pinky there. Like that. You could also use your third finger. I use my pinky. Okay? So let's look at just that much. Oops. Even that's a great lick right there. You can end it right there. Okay, after that, go back to 0, and now we're going to do a walk-up that we're already familiar with in our experimentation. We're adding that blue note. Cool, huh? So then we do the bottom of a B chord, 2-0-2. This is when you're reading tab, you come to recognize some of this stuff sometimes. Like we're clearly on B. So when I go up to this, I'm just gonna fret the whole B and then put the emphasis on those higher notes using my hybrid picking again. So let me play that part. Slow. See what I did there? Now you're in place with these fingers to slide up to 3-2-3 and then 4-3-4, which is neat because when you slide up there, you've centered your sound back on E. So it's a lot to digest there. Some hybrid picking stuff that if you're not that familiar with, you got to spend time like we did earlier. You know, take it a little piece at a time. Just practice that over and over again. Difficult stuff if you've never done it before. Okay, real slow. Here's the lick. Again. Okay, now remember, now that's a pretty attractive lick in and of itself because it provides lots of context, lots of grounding in and of its own existence. But that's not where we're stopping. We're going to go back to that track and we're going to make good on some of the stuff. And this might sound really good as a turnaround over part of that track, but we want to see where else an experiment, we want to see where else it could be used by altering the phrasing, maybe borrowing some of the phrasing, borrowing some of the finger positions, and just experimenting with it. This is what we want to do with the lick. So we've learned the lick. This is what you want to do in your guided practice this week as well. So we've learned the lick. Let's go back to our good old faithful slow change E. I'm feeling like, Jeff, we may need to turn that track down just a hair. Cool. Here we go. Split the difference, please. What are we going to do with the A? That doesn't sound right. That sounds great over the E. What about the B? Ah, well, we have the second part. Ooh, I was able to use the end there. This is how you experiment. This is how you do it. Let's go down to the A string. Oh, we'll do it next time. Okay, so there was kind of neat. I was able to take the sixth idea. Because of the tuning, your sixth looks a little bit different on this set of strings. But I was able to take the same concept over the A, and it actually worked pretty well. Let's try that. Let's be more intentional about switching back and forth with that. Do it on the turnaround. Ready? So we had to modify it a little bit because we're not. All right, so you get the idea. This, as much as anything, is a lesson on how to practice new stuff. We're just using the blues to demonstrate it. So when you learn something new, when you learn a new blues lick, when you learn a new lick or a new riff, shop it around to what you already play and what you already know, and see how you can incorporate it into your playing. I was very intentional on my improv here. I wasn't really improvising. I'm just focusing. You notice for the most part, I'm not noodling all over the neck. I'm taking this one thing and exploring it, internalizing it, molding it, modifying it, borrowing from it. And that is going to increase my bag of tricks much more in depth than simply learning a bunch of licks and not having any context for them. So that's all I have for content today. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to take them.
There actually aren't any new questions right now. There's a lot of discussion.
Yeah, about like cars or something, or
yeah, people are talking about buying Miatas in Lakewood tonight.
Oh, have you started this?
Yeah, no, they're just talking about the lick and how helpful it is, and
cool.
Talking about where the hammer-ons are. So people are interactive. I'm just guessing there's not a lot of questions tonight, which for a kind of concept lesson like this seems to be a good thing to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm interested as you guys do the guided practice this week. Yeah, definitely. The badge that is for this, it's the demonstration of the ZZ, this thing. It's the demonstration of that over the backing track. So in order for me to see how you're doing, you're just going to have to message me or tell me next week on this idea of learning a lick and plugging it into different contexts. I'm excited to hear how you're doing with it. So Cool. If there are no other questions,
This isn't a question. I'm
Okay.
actually waiting for clarification, but Luke the Bluesman says you can mix and match the 3 licks we learned tonight into one track or into one tune.
absolutely. It's so awesome to be able to do that.
Yeah. And I'm just not sure if he was asking you to do it or if he was just making a comment, but either way,
Yeah,
good stuff.
it's a very good idea. Make sure that you practice each lick one by one. But yeah, you absolutely can do that. Absolutely. And really, I mean, yeah, here's So yeah, I mean, you can go back and forth from each lick. And I mean, right there, it wasn't very beautiful, but the idea was that you were taking, I mean, those initially were not all in the same context at all. But we said, we're going to pull from our newly found bag of tricks, play those licks. And now I mean, that's a pretty, throw in a couple more licks and you've done some pretty cool stuff. Cool. All right. Well, we'll see you next week. Week 7, Blues Roots to Rock. We got more like this coming. Have a good week.